is a huge shock to the nation and to the world. Queen Elizabeth II was the rock on which modern Britain was built. Our country has grown and flourished under her reign. Britain is the great country it is today because of her. She ascended the throne just after the Second World War. She championed the development of the Commonwealth from a small group of 7 countries to a family of 56 nations, spanning every continent of the world. We are now a modern, thriving, dynamic nation. Through thick and thin, Queen Elizabeth II provided us with the stability and the strength that we needed. She was the very spirit of Great Britain, and that spirit will endure. She has been our longest ever reigning monarch. It's an extraordinary achievement to have presided with such dignity and grace for 70 years. Her life of service stretched beyond most of our living memories. In return, she was loved and admired by the people in the United Kingdom and all around the world. She has been a personal inspiration to me and to many Britons. Her devotion to duty is an example to us all. Earlier this week, at 96, she remained determined to carry out her duties as she appointed me as her 15th Prime Minister. Throughout her life, she's visited more than 100 countries, and she has touched the lives of millions around the world. In the difficult days ahead, we will come together with our friends across the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth and the world to celebrate her extraordinary lifetime of service. It is a day of great loss, but Queen Elizabeth II leaves a great legacy. Today the crown passes, as it has done for more than 1,000 years, to our new monarch, our new head of state, His Majesty King Charles III. With the King's family, we mourn the loss of his mother, and as we mourn, we must come together as a people to support him, to help him bear the awesome responsibility that he now carries for us all. We offer him our loyalty and devotion, just as his mother devoted so much to so many for so long. And with the passing of the second Elizabethan age, we usher in a new era in the magnificent history of our great country, exactly as Her Majesty would have wished, by saying the words, "God save the King."
Those are emotional words coming in from the UK Prime Minister Liz Truss. Just a summary of the very jolt that Britain is feeling at this point as it begins 10 days of national mourning after the passing away of Queen Elizabeth II at the age of 96. Let's also take you through this statement that's come in just a few minutes ago from the Buckingham Palace. On your screen is that statement, a statement from His Majesty the King at the time of the Queen's death. I'm reading from it now for your benefit. The death of my beloved mother, Her Majesty the Queen, is a moment of the greatest sadness for me and all members of my family. We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and a much-loved mother. I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world. During this period of mourning and change, my family and I will be comforted and sustained by our knowledge of the respect and deep affection in which the Queen was so widely held. This is the statement that's been released by Buckingham Palace just a few minutes ago. For those of you just joining us, we have been getting you the latest coming in from the UK as Britain mourns Queen Elizabeth II. The Queen passed away at the age of 96. The UK Prime Minister Liz Truss who was just a few days ago appointed as the Prime Minister by the Queen, also addressed the nation just a few minutes ago, talking about the Queen's contribution, speaking after the Queen's demise in that emotional address. The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. Remember, she had been at the Balmoral Castle for quite some time. She had been facing mobility issues earlier. In recent past, there have been issues over her health. Just 24 hours ago, there was news of her being forced to cancel a virtual meeting after she was advised by the doctors to take some rest. And over the last few hours, the concerns over her health condition heightened after the news came in from Buckingham Palace, a statement talking about how there are concerns over her medical condition, over her health condition, post which the royal family members were rushing to Balmoral Castle, and just a short while back, the news came in of Queen Elizabeth II no more. With me have been Andrew Whitehead and Jonathan. Andrew, if I can just come to you at this point and ask you to piece together for us the reactions that have been coming in. We just heard the Prime Minister of the UK, and just to give our viewers a sense of the kind of jolt that this really leaves Britain with.
Well, as you say, Liz Truss, a Prime Minister of just 2 days, addressing the nation from outside Downing Street to say that the Queen has died. She said it had been a huge shock to the nation and to the world. She described the Queen as the rock on which modern Britain had been built. And you could see that Liz Truss was wearing black, the colours of mourning. We are now on 10 days of official mourning. I expect that crowds will start to gather outside Buckingham Palace. The Queen's body is not there. It's in Balmoral in the north of Scotland, but Buckingham Palace, the Queen's primary residence in London, is always the focus for these sorts of events. But the plans for the movement of the body and for the funeral in a week or 10 days' time will have already been mapped out in great detail. And of course, we do have a new monarch. And it was quite striking to hear Liz Truss just now say, "God save the King." It's the first time any British Prime Minister has said, "God save the King," for well over 70 years, because of course the Queen ascended to the throne way back in 1952. In fact, the Queen had already been on the throne for 25 years when Liz Truss was born. So most people have no recollection of any other monarch than Queen Elizabeth. And there will be a profound sense of shock, even though she was well into her 90s, but of great sadness. She was really admired and liked. She was humble and compassionate and good-natured. And I think even those who are not particularly monarchists will have a pang of regret at her passing.
Indeed. Stay with me, Jonathan and Andrew Whitehead, as Andrew was just telling us and giving us a better sense of the jolt and the sense of shock in Britain. 10 days of national mourning. We have been getting you the latest statements and reactions that have been coming in from Buckingham Palace. The Queen just days ago hosted Britain's new Prime Minister Liz Truss after she invited Truss to form a government after Boris Johnson's resignation. The 96-year-old has been the longest reigning monarch in British history. She inherited the throne at the age of 25. In 2015, she surpassed Queen Victoria's reign, and during this time, Queen Elizabeth had witnessed some historic events, from wars to recessions, global health crises. She has appointed 15 British Prime Ministers. She has also met 13 of the last 14 presidents of the United States. That is, in itself, just a sample of what the Queen's death and this unfortunate news really means for the entire world. British politicians have been reacting. We just heard the UK Prime Minister Liz Truss also addressing the nation. If I can come to you, Jonathan, at this point. Before I do that, Jonathan, let's just have our viewers listen in to what the UK Prime Minister said just a short while ago.
We are all devastated by the news that we have just heard from Balmoral. The death of Her Majesty the Queen is a huge shock to the nation and to the world. Queen Elizabeth II was the rock on which modern Britain was built. Our country has grown and flourished under her reign. Our country has grown and flourished under her reign. Britain is the great country it is today because of her. She ascended the throne just after the Second World War. She championed the development of the Commonwealth from a small group of 7 countries to a family of 56 nations, spanning every continent of the world. We are now a modern, thriving, dynamic nation. Through thick and thin, Queen Elizabeth II provided us with the stability and the strength that we needed. She was the very spirit of Great Britain, and that spirit will endure. She has been our longest ever reigning monarch. It's an extraordinary achievement to have presided with such dignity and grace for 70 years.
Yes, with that, I want to go back across to Jonathan. We have been piecing together the reactions that have been coming in and talking about the sense of shock in Britain, Jonathan. Let's also talk about the Queen's legacy and the kind of challenges that she has faced in that reign, which she also in 2015 surpassed Queen Victoria's reign. She has witnessed historic events from wars to recessions to global health crises. Those have been just some of the challenges and the global crises that she has witnessed during that reign.
Absolutely. It's an extraordinary legacy that spans post-war British history. And of course, she remembered the war as well. She served in the forces during the Second World War. And she famously went out into the crowds on VE Day when the war ended. So this was a person who embodied modern Britain, for good or ill. And anyone who's lived in Britain since the war will have some connection to her, whether they're a Republican or a monarchist. And that is why I think this death will have wide ramifications, because everyone feels something about the Queen. Most people are very fond of her, even if they don't like the monarchy. And the majority of the British people are still in favour of the monarchy. But this does embody something profound about the way that Britain has changed and is changing and will change, particularly at a moment of crisis, of economic crisis that we're facing at the moment, and a political upheaval that has just seen a Prime Minister resign. You now have the 4th Prime Minister in 6 years. And so this is a momentous period in British history. And it seems fitting in some way that the Queen has died at this time, just as people are beginning to reassess the direction in which Britain is going. But in terms of her legacy, we will all celebrate how she brought people together. She became a focal point that brought people from different parts of the UK together, different backgrounds, different sort of social backgrounds as well, ethnic, religious, also, people in Scotland, Wales, and some people in Northern Ireland, as well as in England. And she did a lot to change Britain as well. I think about the time that she went to Ireland. There was a state visit to Ireland about 10 years ago, which would have been unthinkable for most of her reign. And she built bridges with Ireland, which was obviously a country that had had a very, very difficult colonial relationship with Britain. And that was a way in which the Queen was able to heal old wounds, as well as living through them.
Indeed. Andrew, would you like to add to that?
I think Jonathan's absolutely right. Because she was so well regarded, she did have a real diplomatic strength. And certainly in terms of healing wounds, her trip to Dublin, the capital of the Irish Republic, was quite a landmark. Dublin broke away from Britain and from the Crown, and there had been a legacy of bitterness between Britain and Ireland, which the Queen was able to help overcome. She is not a diplomat, and she was not a politician. She basically did, as a constitutional monarch should, she did what her government asked and requested her to do. But because of her authority, because she was so long in the reigning monarch, she did have a special status. And I think she is probably the most famous woman in the world and one of the most respected. And I think that respect gave her a real strength. And American presidents, Indian prime ministers, people liked to meet the Queen in Buckingham Palace. And presidents in particular really relished the opportunity of going to Buckingham Palace. So this was something which really gave lustre to Britain. I mean, it's much more special to meet the Queen than it is to meet a prime minister. And of course, when things fall apart in Britain, as they do from time to time in terms of politics or economic crisis, and at the moment we've got both political and economic crises playing out, the Queen was a constant reference point. And now we've lost that reference point. And I think, although she's not a key political or diplomatic player, that will lead to a sense of lack of confidence, lack of purpose, lack of certainty in public life, at least for a while.
Yes, and Andrew, there would also be a lot of curiosity as far as the viewers are concerned on what happens from here onwards regarding the protocol. Would you be able to just help our viewers better understand the procedure as well?
Well, we've now embarked on 10 days of official mourning.
Yes.
So flags will be at half-mast. Many events, I don't think all events, but many events will be postponed until after the funeral. As we understand it, the Queen's body remains at Balmoral Castle in the north of Scotland. All 4 of her children are there. So is William, her grandson, and the second in line to the throne. We have a new monarch, King Charles III, and he's already, as you've read out to your viewers, he's already issued a message to the nation expressing his deep sadness at the death of his mother, the Queen. The body will travel in the next 48 hours by road to the Scottish capital, Edinburgh, where it will probably lie in state at Holyrood, which is a royal palace, and perhaps also at St Giles Cathedral. And then it will come down to London by train and will lie in state in London. And then there will be a funeral with leaders from all over the world attending, and that's likely to be in Westminster Abbey. And I don't think a date has been announced, but that will probably be in about a week or 10 days' time. We have a new king, but the coronation is not likely to be until sometime well into next year.